Sarah studied the tactical data. The Koreans were attempting to modify their quantum shields, desperately trying to close the vulnerabilities that humanity had exploited. It was like watching someone try to patch a dam with tissue paper. "They still don't understand," she said softly. "They think this is a normal war, just with better technology. They haven't grasped that we're operating on fundamentally different principles." She straightened up, her decision made. Time for Phase 2. Let's show them what happens when humanity decides to really flex its muscles. Across Korean space, reality began to shift. Their quantum communication networks, the backbone of their empire, suddenly carried new signals. Every computer system, from the mightiest warship to the smallest personal device, began receiving data packets that shouldn't have been possible to transmit. Message broadcasting on all frequencies, Rodriguez confirmed. Every citizen of the empire can see it. The message was simple but devastating. A complete technical breakdown of Korean quantum technology, along with detailed explanations of its limitations and vulnerabilities. But more than that, it included something that would shake the empire to its foundations, proof that their ruling class had been deliberately suppressing technological advancement to maintain their military control. Their response? Sarah asked. Chaos, Rodriguez reported, watching the data streams. Their civilian population is demanding answers. The reinforcement fleets are experiencing crew rebellions. Some of their colony worlds are declaring independence. Sarah nodded grimly. And now for the demonstration. At her command, humanity's true warships finally revealed themselves. They didn't emerge from hyperspace or quantum tunnels. They simply shifted from one state of reality to another, appearing simultaneously across Korean space. Each vessel was a testament to what happened when humanity focused its legendary creativity and innovation on the art of war. The ships defied conventional description. They manipulated gravity as easily as normal ships moved through water. Their weapons didn't destroy. They rewrote the laws of physics in localized areas, turning enemy weapons and defenses into cosmic accidents waiting to happen. Message from their Imperial Council. Rodriguez announced. They're requesting a ceasefire. Sarah studied the quantum displays, watching as the Empire's carefully maintained power structure crumbled in real time. Accept the request and prepare the education package. Education package. We're not here to conquer them, Sarah explained. We're here to help them break free from their technological stagnation. Their people are brilliant. They just need to be shown what's possible when you stop accepting limitations. The quantum displays shifted again, showing new data streams. Humanity's ships were already beginning to share technological insights with Korean civilian scientists. Not weapons technology. That would have to wait until they proved they could handle it responsibly. But innovations in medicine, environmental restoration, and clean energy. Look at how quickly they're adapting, Sarah noted with approval. Once they're freed from their military doctrine, their natural innovation is remarkable. They might make good allies eventually. And the Imperial Council. Sarah's expression hardened slightly. They get to watch as their people leap forward into a future they tried to prevent. Sometimes the cruelest punishment is simply showing someone the opportunities they wasted. Across Korean space, a new age was dawning. Their mighty warships hung silent in space, their quantum cores stripped of power, while their civilian sectors buzzed with unprecedented activity. The species that had spent 3 millennia perfecting the art of conquest was about to learn something far more valuable, the art of progress. And in orbit around Earth, High Admiral Vanth watched it all unfold, finally understanding the true measure of the species he had so fatally underestimated. Humanity hadn't just defeated them. They had fundamentally changed what was possible, and in doing so, they had given the Korean people something they had lost long ago. Hope. Victory's price. 1 year after the failed invasion of Earth, High Admiral Vanth stood before the newly formed Galactic Council. The chamber, located in a neutral space station orbiting a red dwarf star, represented something unprecedented in Korean history. a place where their people met with other species as equals, not conquerors. Dr. Sarah Chen sat across from him, her presence a constant reminder of how completely the universe had changed. The quantum displays around them showed real-time data from across former Korean space, telling a story of transformation that still seemed impossible. On Earth, in a hidden facility deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, Dr. Sarah Chen watched the Korean fleet's arrival on a holographic display of her own. Unlike the aliens' blue-tinted technology, hers shimmered with colors that shouldn't exist in normal spacetime. "They took the bait," she said softly, a small smile playing at her lips. "Time to show them why you should never judge a book by its cover." The silent defense. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the heart of Project Prometheus, Earth's true defense command center. Around her, holographic displays showed the Korean fleet in perfect detail, not just their positions, but the quantum state of every particle in their ships. The chamber itself seemed to defy physics, its walls shifting between states of matter that shouldn't exist. "Status report," she commanded, her voice calm despite the weight of humanity's fate resting on their response to this invasion. Admiral James Rodriguez, his dark eyes reflecting the impossible colors of the quantum displays, stepped forward. "The Koreans are proceeding exactly as predicted. Their fleet formation suggests they're following their standard conquest protocol, the same one they've used for the last 17 species they've destroyed." "Poor bastards," Sarah muttered, though there was no sympathy in her voice. "They still think we're just another primitive civilization waiting to be conquered. Have they noticed any of our true defensive systems?" A young lieutenant spoke up, his hands dancing through the holographic interface. "No, Dr. Chen. Their quantum sensors are still being fed our camouflage data. As far as they're concerned, Earth's most advanced weapons are nuclear missiles and simple energy shields." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. The Koreans weren't stupid. They were simply victims of their own success. 3,000 years of easy conquests had made them arrogant, blind to the possibility that a younger species might have surpassed them. "Their High Admiral is hailing Earth's primitive communication systems," Rodriguez reported. "Standard ultimatum: surrender or face extinction." "Let's play this carefully," Sarah said, her mind racing through the countless simulations they'd run for this moment. "Have the UN Secretary General respond with fear and confusion. Make them think we're just now realizing the scope of their fleet." The chamber hummed with activity as Earth's most advanced AI systems crafted the perfect response. Just panicked enough to be believable, just defiant enough to prod the Koreans into their next predictable move. High Admiral Vance's holographic image appeared before the UN Security Council, his 4 eyes glowing with barely contained disdain. The Korean's message was translated in real time. "Your species has 2 standard rotations to submit to Korean rule. Resistance will result in the systematic destruction of your colonies, followed by the sterilization of your homeworld." Sarah watched from Prometheus as the UN representatives played their parts perfectly, some showing fear, others foolish bravado, all of it carefully choreographed to reinforce the Koreans' fatal misconception. Meanwhile, humanity's true defensive grid was silently coming online. Quantum processors that made the Koreans' technology look primitive began spinning up. Weapons that didn't just bend physics but rewrote its rules entirely waited in dimensional spaces the aliens couldn't even detect. "They're starting their standard intimidation display," Rodriguez reported. One of the Koreans' massive battleships moved into position near Mars, its weapon systems charging up. "Right on schedule," Sarah nodded. "Let them destroy the decoy base on Phobos. It'll make for a good show." The Korean vessel fired, its quantum-enhanced beam cutting through Mars' small moon like butter. The explosion was spectacular and completely meaningless. The real Phobos base was untouched, protected by technology that the Koreans would have dismissed as impossible even if they could detect it. "Incoming transmission from their science officer," the lieutenant announced. "She's detected some unusual readings from the explosion." Sarah's expression turned serious. "That one might be dangerous." She's starting to ask the right questions. She turned to Rodriguez. Make sure our quantum camouflage is perfect around their sensor arrays. We can't have them stumbling onto the truth too early. As if on cue, alarms blared through the Korean fleet. Their sensors had detected something impossible. A brief flicker of technology far beyond their understanding. But before they could analyze it, the reading vanished, dismissed as a sensor malfunction. They're proceeding with their invasion plan, Rodriguez reported, moving to surround Earth's orbital defense platforms. Sarah nodded, watching the alien fleet maneuver into what they thought was an overwhelming attack formation. In reality, they were positioning themselves exactly where Earth's defense systems needed them to be. How long until they realize those aren't really our defense platforms? Someone asked. They won't, Sarah replied, her voice carrying absolute certainty. Not until it's far too late. The quantum entanglement field is already in place. When they fire their first shot at Earth, she left the sentence unfinished, but everyone in the chamber knew what would happen. The Koreans had spent 3,000 years perfecting their art of conquest, but in doing so, they'd become predictable. Humanity, on the other hand, had spent its entire history preparing for this moment, not through deliberate planning, but through their unique combination of paranoia, creativity, and the ability to make impossible leaps in understanding. As the alien fleet moved into its final attack position, Sarah couldn't help but feel a twinge of pity. The Koreans were about to learn a harsh lesson about the dangers of underestimating a species that had turned deception into an art form. All systems ready, Rodriguez reported, waiting for your command. Sarah took a deep breath, her hand hovering over the quantum interface. Let them fire first, she said. Let them learn why humanity has survived every crisis we've ever faced. The fate of two civilizations hung in the balance, but only one of them knew the true stakes of the battle about to begin. Breaking the unbreakable. High Admiral Vanth stood triumphant on his command bridge as 10,000 Korean warships moved into their final attack positions around Earth. Their quantum shields created a lattice of impenetrable energy, a siege wall that had spelled doom for 17 civilizations before this one. Begin the attack, he commanded, his voice carrying the weight of 3 millennia of unbroken victories. Target their primitive defense platforms first. The Korean fleet opened fire simultaneously, their quantum-enhanced weapons unleashing enough energy to shatter a small moon. The beams struck Earth's orbital platforms, and for a moment, everything seemed to proceed as expected. Then reality itself seemed to hiccup. High Admiral. Science Officer Mira's voice carried an edge of panic he'd never heard before. The defense platforms, they're not there. What do you mean they're not there? Vanth demanded, but he could see it himself. Where their sensors had shown primitive defense stations, there was nothing but empty space. Their weapons had passed through holograms. Incoming transmission, the communication officer announced. It's coming from inside our quantum shielding. Dr. Sarah Chen's image appeared before them, her expression almost pitying. I suppose now would be a good time to properly introduce ourselves. Those defense platforms you just tried to destroy. They were never real. Just like those primitive satellites you've been scanning for the past month weren't real. Would you like to see what we actually have up here? The space around the Korean fleet suddenly shifted, as if reality was being peeled back layer by layer. Massive structures materialized all around them, installations that dwarfed even their largest vessels. But these weren't the crude orbital platforms they detected earlier. These stations seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once, their surfaces rippling with energy patterns that shouldn't have been possible. Impossible, Vanth whispered. Our quantum shields are based on a fundamentally flawed understanding of quantum mechanics, Sarah interrupted. You've been stuck in the same technological rut for 3,000 years, High Admiral. You stopped innovating. Stopped questioning your basic assumptions about how the universe works. Want to know why we still use chemical rockets for some missions? Because sometimes the old ways are still useful. We didn't abandon our past technologies. We transcended them. As if to demonstrate her point, small distortions began appearing throughout the Corian fleet. Ships started reporting system failures, quantum shields flickering, as if they were being unraveled from the inside out. "You're inside our shields," Grand Strategist Kale realized, horror dawning in all four of his eyes. "You've been inside them this entire time. We've been inside your ship's quantum matrices since you first entered our solar system," Sarah confirmed. "Those energy signatures you dismissed as sensor malfunctions, those were our probe ships studying every aspect of your technology. We could have destroyed your fleet at any time, but we wanted to understand you first, to see if peaceful contact was possible." Vanth's tail lashed in fury. "You dare to judge us? We are the Corian Empire. We have conquered 17 species. Yes, we know." Sarah cut him off. "We found their records in your databases. Species that were genuinely primitive, or who had developed along the same technological path as you. But you've never encountered anyone who took a different approach to understanding the universe. Never met a species that made the quantum leap we did." Around the Corian fleet, the impossible stations began to move, not through normal space, but through dimensions that the Corians had never even theorized could exist. Their weapons didn't fire beams or projectiles. They simply reached into the quantum structure of reality and rewrote it. "Final warning." Sarah's voice was firm but not unkind. "Take your fleet and go home. We'll even let you keep one ship's quantum core intact so you can make it back. The rest we're going to have to dismantle. Can't have you using them to conquer anyone else." Vanth stood frozen, watching as ship after ship in his fleet reported complete system failures. Their quantum cores, the heart of Corian technology, were being unraveled by forces he couldn't even comprehend. 3,000 years of military supremacy was evaporating before his eyes. "How?" he finally managed to ask. "How did you advance so far beyond us?" Sarah's expression softened slightly. "Because we never assumed we had all the answers. Every time we thought we understood something, someone would come along and prove we were wrong. We learned to question everything, to look for answers in places that seemed impossible. You saw our theoretical physics papers, the ones you dismissed because they didn't match our apparent technology level. Those weren't theories. They were instruction manuals." The demonstration continued as more Corian ships went dark, their quantum cores gently disassembled by forces that operated on principles their science couldn't explain. It wasn't a battle. It was a lesson in humility, delivered with surgical precision. "Your weapons," Mira breathed, her scientific curiosity overwhelming her fear. "They're not weapons at all, are they? They're tools for manipulating the fundamental structure of reality itself." "Now you're asking the right questions," Sarah nodded approvingly. "Though I should correct you. Everything is a weapon if you use it that way. We just prefer not to. That's another difference between us." As the last active ships in his fleet went dark, High Admiral Vanth finally understood. The Corians hadn't found a primitive species ready for conquest. They had stumbled into a lesson about the dangers of technological stagnation and imperial arrogance. And somewhere in the vast database of the Corian Empire, the classification of Earth would need to be updated. Approach with extreme caution. They are not what they seem. The counterstrike. As the disabled Corian fleet drifted in Earth's orbit, their mighty warships now little more than elaborate sculptures in space, Dr. Sarah Chen prepared for the next phase of humanity's response. The chamber of Project Prometheus had transformed, its quantum displays now showing not just Earth's solar system, but the entire Corian Empire. "Status report on the Empire's response," she asked, her eyes tracking the movement of Corian reinforcement fleets across the galactic map. Admiral Rodriguez gestured at the display, highlighting multiple fleet movements. "They're reacting exactly as predicted. 3 more assault fleets have been mobilized, 30,000 ships in total. They're taking this very personally." "Of course they are," Sarah nodded. "We didn't just defeat them. We shattered their entire worldview. 3,000 years of thinking. They were the apex of technological achievement, only to discover they'd been playing with toys. She paused, studying the tactical display. Have they figured out how to track our quantum probe ships yet? No, Rodriguez smiled slightly. Our agents are moving freely through their territory. They still can't detect anything operating on post-quantum principles. The quantum displays shifted, showing detailed scans of Quarian worlds. Humanity's probe ships, vessels that existed partially outside normal spacetime, had been mapping the Empire's territory since the moment they first detected the Quarian scouts. What they found was simultaneously impressive and tragic. Look at this. Sarah gestured to a particular dataset. Their civilian technology has barely advanced in the last millennium. They've been so focused on military supremacy that they've neglected everything else. Millions of their own people living in conditions that we solved centuries ago. A junior officer spoke up, his voice carrying a note of concern. The reinforcement fleets are adopting new formations. They're trying to adapt to our capabilities. First contact's deception. High Admiral Vanth of the Quarian Empire stood motionless before the holographic display, his scaled fingers tapping rhythmically against his ceremonial staff. The blue-tinted projection showed a seemingly unremarkable solar system, with its third planet glowing like a precious stone against the void. Earth. Impossible, he muttered, his secondary eyes narrowing while his primary set remained fixed on the readings. Run the quantum analysis again. Chief Science Officer Mira adjusted her instruments, her crystalline headpiece catching the light from the bridge's bioluminescent panels. The results remain consistent, High Admiral. Their technology appears primitive. Chemical rockets, basic fusion reactors, rudimentary satellite networks. But, there are anomalies we cannot explain. Energy signatures that appear and disappear. Quantum fluctuations that defy our understanding. It's as if. She hesitated, as if they're deliberately masking something. Vanth dismissed the thought with a wave of his hand. Primitives cannot mask what they do not comprehend. The human species has barely reached beyond their solar system. Their colonies are few, their ships are slow, and their weapons are laughable. Yet something gnawed at him. In 3,000 years of Quarian expansion, they had never encountered a species quite like this. Most civilizations followed predictable patterns of technological development. But humans, their progress was erratic, full of inexplicable leaps and puzzling gaps. Prepare the battle fleet, Vanth commanded, his voice echoing through the crystalline chamber. 10,000 ships should suffice for such an insignificant race. We will offer them the standard terms, submission or extinction. Behind him, Grand Strategist Kale cleared his throat, a sound like grinding stones. High Admiral, if I may. There is something about their historical records that concerns me. Every species we've encountered has a history of internal warfare. Yes, but humans. He pulled up another hologram, this one showing Earth's military history. They have mastered the art of deception on a scale we've never seen. They routinely defeat superior forces through misdirection and unconventional tactics. Vanth studied the historical data with growing irritation. Are you suggesting we should fear a species that still uses projectile weapons? Their most advanced ships rely on nuclear fission, Kale. Nuclear fission. He spat the words as if they tasted bitter. We'd harness the power of artificial singularities. Our smallest scout ships could obliterate their most powerful vessels. That is precisely my concern, Kale persisted. Why would an intelligent species maintain such primitive technology when our scans show they clearly possess the scientific knowledge for much more? Their theoretical physics papers discuss concepts even we haven't mastered, yet they launch rockets that would embarrass a child's toy. The bridge fell silent. Even the usual hum of the quantum cores seemed muted, as if the ship itself was contemplating this paradox. Finally, Vanth spoke, his voice carrying the weight of 3 millennia of Quarian military supremacy. Your concerns are noted, Grand Strategist. But consider this, perhaps their theoretical knowledge simply exceeds their engineering capabilities. It wouldn't be the first time we've encountered such a species. He turned to face his crew, all four eyes gleaming with anticipated victory. We will proceed with standard conquest protocols. Prepare the probe ships for initial contact. As the crew rushed to obey, Mira made one final attempt. High Admiral, there's one more thing. The quantum fluctuations we detected, they bear a striking resemblance to theoretical models of space-time manipulation. If the humans have somehow mastered such technology, enough. Vanth's tail lashed in annoyance. I will not delay this conquest based on theoretical readings and paranoid speculation. The Korean Empire has subjugated 17 starfaring civilizations. None survived more than a standard solar cycle of resistance. Humans will be no different. As the massive Korean fleet began its deployment sequence, none of them noticed the small distortions in space-time around their ships, ripples in reality that shouldn't have been possible according to their understanding of physics. The humans had noticed the Korean scouts long ago, and they had been preparing, but not in ways the Koreans could comprehend. The invasion fleet emerged from quantum space in perfect formation, a sight that had heralded the doom of countless civilizations. 10,000 ships, each capable of reducing a continent to ash, their quantum shields supposedly impenetrable. The liberation of our 17 subjugated worlds is proceeding ahead of schedule, Vanth reported, his voice carrying the humility that would have been unthinkable a year ago. The human advisors have been invaluable in helping these species reclaim their independence. Sarah nodded, studying the data streams. And your own people? How are they adapting to the changes? Vanth's secondary eyes blinked in what humans had learned was an expression of amazement. It's extraordinary. Once we remove the artificial constraints on civilian research and development, our scientists began making breakthrough after breakthrough. They're already beginning to understand some of the principles behind your post-quantum technology. Not just understanding. Sarah smiled. They're innovating in ways we hadn't considered. Your people have a unique perspective that's leading to some fascinating developments. The displays shifted, showing scenes from across the former empire. Korean cities were being transformed by technologies that merged their traditional quantum engineering with human insights. Their warships, once symbols of oppression, were being reconstructed into exploration vessels and scientific platforms. There is something I still don't understand, Vanth said carefully. You could have destroyed us completely. Your technology so far exceeded ours that we would have been helpless. Why show mercy? Sarah's expression grew thoughtful. Because that's not who we are, Admiral. Humanity learned long ago that true strength isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about transforming them into friends. She gestured at the displays. Look at what your people have accomplished in just 1 year of freedom. Imagine what they'll achieve in a century. The data streams showed more than just technological advancement. Cultural exchanges were happening across the former empire. Species that had once cowered under Korean dominion were now sharing their art, their music, their unique perspectives on the universe. We've received the preliminary reports from the quantum archaeology teams, Vanth said, changing the subject. The evidence they've uncovered, it's changing everything we thought we knew about our history. Sarah leaned forward, genuinely interested. This had been one of the most surprising discoveries of the past year. Buried deep in Korean records were hints that their ancestors had once possessed technology far more advanced than what they had wielded as conquerors. Your people didn't start as conquerors, she confirmed. The imperial phase of your civilization was a deviation, not your destiny. Your earliest ancestors were explorers and innovators, not unlike humans. Somewhere along the way, fear and a desire for control overtook that spirit of discovery. The quantum displays showed reconstructions of ancient Korean achievements, technologies that had been deliberately forgotten or suppressed by the imperial regime. It was a haunting reminder of how a civilization could be led astray from its true potential. And now, Vanth asked, all four eyes fixed on Sarah. Now you have a choice, she replied. Your people are free to choose their own path forward. We'll continue to share our knowledge and technology, But what you do with it, that's up to you. The display shifted one final time, showing a new image that brought Vanth to stunned silence. It was a joint human-Quarian research vessel preparing for its maiden voyage. Its design incorporated the best of both civilizations' technology, creating something entirely new. The Star Seeker, Sarah explained, first of her class, a symbol of what we can achieve together. Her mission is to explore regions of space that neither of our species could have reached alone. Vanth studied the ship with all four eyes, seeing in its design the future his people had nearly lost to imperial ambition. And her crew? Mixed, Sarah smiled. Human, Quarian, and representatives from several of the formerly subjugated species, all bringing their unique perspectives and abilities to the mission. As they watched the Star Seeker prepare for launch, Vanth finally understood the full magnitude of what had happened. Humanity hadn't just defeated the Quarian Empire. They had freed the Quarian people from their own worst instincts. In doing so, they had transformed a potential apocalypse into a renaissance. You know, Sarah said thoughtfully, some of our historians have pointed out an interesting pattern. Throughout human history, our greatest achievements often came after our closest brushes with disaster. Maybe that's true for all species. Maybe sometimes you need to face the possibility of ending everything to find a new beginning. The Star Seeker engaged its engines, a revolutionary hybrid of human and Quarian technology, and began its journey into the unknown. As Vanth watched it go, he realized that this was the true victory, not the defeat of an empire, but the birth of something greater. In the end, 10,000 ships had come to conquer Earth, and while few had returned home, something far more precious had taken their place, hope for a future that neither species could have achieved alone. And somewhere in the vast database of human knowledge, a new entry was added, the Quarian Incident, a reminder that the greatest victories are not won through destruction, but through transformation.